Here's my imitation of Jim Morrison. You know the day destroys the night. and you know, and night divides the day. And you know how I do it? You know, that what was the guy? It was the post office guy from Cheers.
John Ratzenberger.
So that's what I try to do. I just try to imitate myself.
Channel John Ratzenberger.
I try to channel him, and then I sing. It's him, but singing. You know the day destroys the night. My favorite author is a guy named Chuck Klosterman.
Oh, yeah.
And he talks about music a lot and stuff like that. And he mentions that for most teenage boys, they have a Led Zeppelin phase. Yep. Where they feel that they discover Led Zeppelin and they think that they're the coolest band in the world. And, you know, they start drawing the four symbols on their notebook and all this shit.
Start seeing this.
Robert Plant is the guy. If you're starting to think about playing guitar, Jimmy Page is going to be your guitar god.
Well, any parent out there knows that once the black lights are installed in your son's room, you start seeing the Swan Song, you know, and all the black light posters,
and your
kid is gone.
And I
he has broke on through to the other side.
And I remember when I got into Zeppelin, and there's a certain level of truth that there was a point where like I got into them and like, oh my god, this band is like epic. And I still like Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. Led Zeppelin didn't grow on me.
What's that?
Led Zeppelin didn't grow on me. I didn't have that thing with Led Zeppelin that happens to a lot of kids. It's like I bypassed a lot of everybody had like the Iron Maiden phase, you know,
which I had.
Led Zeppelin is one of those phases. Like when you're into Led Zeppelin, you're into Led Zeppelin. But you only have like that window of time when that stuff just freaking interacts with who you are. And if you miss that, then it's just going to be kind of like, oh yeah, they had a couple of good songs.
So you would agree with Chuck Klosterman says about Led Zeppelin?
Yeah. And
I agree. But I think the same thing happened with me and with a lot of my friends with the Doors.
Absolutely.
I mean, I had my Led Zeppelin phase, but the band that really, really came and stayed with me was the Doors.
Yeah, it was.
Do you feel that way?
Well, I bypassed all the psychedelic rock. I mean, there is a psychedelic band that touches the 14-year-old rock kid, and you know it could be Pink Floyd. Mm-hmm. And you can like all of them. And it's not like you only get to be in one gang. No, there's people that love them across the board. But usually there's one band that's the one when it comes to the psychedelic bands of the early heavy metal, you know, the Hendrix but the Doors, I fast forward past all of that.
Okay.
And it was love at first sight, the Doors. It's just the sounds of all those songs were always through my childhood. You always knew about it. And then when you get to that age of discovery, when you start discovering stuff on your own and not like a freaking marionette that just listens to what's put in front of you. And the Doors was the first band that was like, oh my God. And you're gone. You're on that trip now.
What was it about?
There's no looking back.
Well, what was it about the Doors that put them?
I hate to say it, that film, the Oliver Stone movie in '91, that was the tipping point. You know, it's like I always knew the Doors. I always liked what I heard. I remember the videos when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. Like they played it on the MTV's Classic Closet. Yeah. You know, and you'd see Jim Morrison on the Ed Sullivan Show, not doing anything bad either. You know, in the movie they make it out like he completely. He's like being a pervert or something, but no, he's just singing a song. And I always thought he was saying Travis let the night on fire. And I'm like, who's Travis? Why would he set the night on fire? But this is me as a kid.
Well, Travis is their bass player that doesn't get any credit for all their songs.
I'm like, who's that for years, like until I was 13. It was Travis set the night on fire, not try to. So I had to get all that shit sorted out before I dove into the poetic prowess of Jim Morrison. Travis set the night on fire. Fire, yeah! The movie. My mom took me to the movie when I was 14. Right when it first came out.
Yeah.
And it completely just fucked my mind up. I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. Yeah. There goes law school. There goes medical school. There goes straight A's. It's all gone. This is my life now. And
that influential.
That movie influenced me. And you know, people that are the real Doors fans.
So what you're saying is Val Kilmer actually influenced you.
Val Kilmer, yeah. But no, the thing that's beautiful about that movie is they play the music all through it.
Yep.
And that's what turned me on. And I just started going out and buying Doors cassettes. It started with greatest hits. And, you know, you get just the meat and potatoes of the Doors career. And then I started slowly buying those albums. And as you get older and that band stayed with me the whole time and more mature, you realize what an innovative band they were. Yeah. They were doing nothing like anybody else was. They were...
Well, right off the bat, they don't sound like any other band that I've heard. And it comes down to Ray Manzarek's organ. In theory, there is no bass. It's him, John Densmore on drums, Robbie Krieger on guitar.
John Densmore is a jazz drummer.
I mean, there's a bass player on some of the tunes in the studio.
There was?
Yeah. His name is Travis. To this day, it's 2020. I don't know of any other band. There's no other band that sounds like the Doors. Still. No. There's people that sound like Jim Morrison.
Oh, yeah. He started a tribe.
Yeah, he did.
There's a school of Jim Morrison rock and roll lead singers.
But
I wouldn't know anything about that.
But as far as a band, there's no one that sounds like that.
There's nothing like that. And at the time, you know, and you understand this is what, 66, 67, you know, the Summer of Love, you know, that was perfect for that because it was just so freaking off the wall and outlandish.
But would you consider...
But they were all good musicians. It wasn't nonsense.
Well, like you were like with Robbie Krieger, like he did a lot of like finger...
He did flamenco guitar. And I want to say, according to the literature that I've read, he'd only been playing guitar for like 6 months before he joined the band. John Densmore was a jazz drummer. I mean, it wasn't just simple, you know, four on the floor pop beats. Man.
Break on through. That drum beat is a bossa nova beat.
Right.
Because I remember when I got into bossa nova music very big time, I remember like, why are they're all playing the same? It's the Light My Fire. It's the Break On Through the Other Side drum beat.
Yeah.
And I realized it was the other way around.
But you had these 4 different entities, and that's what I've always loved about bands like the Doors. And like, you know, the Beatles, there are 4 different people that are doing these different things that when they come together, it creates something you've never heard. And I believe that was the Doors.
So for you, it wasn't like, because for a lot of, you know, you talk about the Doors and it's like, let's talk about the first Doors album cover. It's like, you got a big, Jim Morrison's head is like half the size of the album. And then like the other 3 guys like.
Well, that's the typical thing. The singer is front and center.
So he got a lot of publicity. A lot of people, when they think of the Doors, they think of Jim Morrison. For some people, they're like, "Oh, he is the Doors," but you feel it's all of them.
Because if it was just Jim Morrison and the Doors, you'd have An American Prayer.
Yeah.
And okay, the Doors is the closest I've ever become interested in poetry. You take the Doors out of the equation of my life, I don't really care about poetry. But his lyrics are poetry. If you just take away the music, you've got poems.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, if it was just him up there, you know, with a tambourine, on freaking open mic night, you know, doing his poem, you got just poetry, which, you know, is beautiful in its own sense. But when it comes to rock and roll, not my thing. But you add that music to what he was doing, not to mention his frontman qualities and what he was doing. It's
outside
out of this world.
Outside of Elvis, of course. Would you consider Jim Morrison to be the first lead singer, frontman rock star?
Yeah, I mean, as far
because I'm really trying to think of anyone else who would have been, and it's like, I mean,
because up until that point you had Elvis, and he shook the world, so to speak. But then after that, it was like, you know, you had surf rock, and
you had the Beatles,
they're cute. And then you had the Beatles.
But that's a band.
But yeah, it was a whole other thing. It wasn't like deep down sexual attraction to a lead singer that...
Maybe Mick
leather
Jagger.
Pants.
Maybe Mick Jagger. But even I would think like back in the 60s, though, the Rolling Stones, people thought of them as the band.
Yeah.
As opposed to Mick Jagger, fronting this band.
Before they became to do their thing, when I think of the first, like, the British invasion, I always thought of them as boy bands.
Yeah.
Because that whole, insanity that happened with Beatlemania is exactly what happens when, like, boy bands and, like, New Kids on the... I experienced it in high school with New Kids on the Block. Every girl was gaga over that band. And it was that same just insanity.
Even The Who, it's like you got Roger Daltrey, amazing frontman.
Yeah.
But again, it's a band where it's like all of them.
Yeah.
Keith Moon, Pete Townsend, John Einschwitz. They're all amazing. So I can't... But when I think of the Doors, as far as like having this...
There's nobody in the Doors that was disposable.
No.
You get these bands...
But Jim Morrison was a nut on stage.
And
I remember like...
and I know exactly where he got that from.
Where?
Living Theater. Julian Beck.
Really?
Julian Beck. He was really influenced. Julian Beck had this thing called Living Theater. And I'm pretty sure I discussed this on prior episodes. But Julian Beck, they would have things where they'd be doing a play, but they would interact with the audience. But it would be really dark stuff, like heroin addicts coming up asking for a fix. And the audience doesn't know, is this real or what's going on here? And they'd scare the audience and make them uncomfortable. And Jim Morrison did that. He did a lot of it, which is weird because he couldn't face the audience for like the first 6 months of their performances.
I understand.
They'd be at the London Fog.
He was really shy.
He was really shy. And then once he wasn't shy anymore, you had the Jim Morrison that we know and love.
Was the Doors part of the whole hippie movement?
No, I don't think it had anything to do with that. I don't think they were like, hey, man, there's this whole Summer of Love thing going on. We got to get on that ball. No, it was Ray Manzarek. Jim Morrison went to the UCLA Film School together. Mm-hmm. They were friends in class. Jim Morrison wasn't a great director. Well, he's probably better than anything I could do, but, he didn't do very well at it. And he ran into Ray on a beach and just started, reading his poetry. And then Ray Manzarek goes, I have an idea. Band. There was a book, an Aldous Huxley book called The Doors of Perception.
Yep.
And that's how they got the name. They did their thing. I think John Densmore was a friend of Ray's through a meditation class, if I remember correctly. But they just got together and, like I said, just 4 different worlds come together. It's like I've always said, when you get a band and everybody in the band likes Iron Maiden. Mm-hmm. Are you an Iron Maiden fan? Are you an Iron Maiden fan? Are you an Iron Maiden fan? Let's get a band together. What the fuck is the band going to sound like?
The Dead Kennedys.
No, you got jazz guy. You got a guy who's been playing guitar for 6 months and plays flamenco guitar. You got a virtuoso keyboard playing bass at the same time. And you got a poet in leather pants.
I think the thing that sets apart the Doors from all the other bands that we talked about, including Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, the darkness of the Doors is so much. Like I can think of a lot of adjectives that describe Zeppelin or Pink Floyd, but one of those isn't dark. And the song that really like flipped the switch on for me with the Doors is The End.
Oh God!
Well, I'm getting chills even just thinking about the song, and you're like, wow, this is taking music to a whole different level, a very dark level. I mean, I'm assuming like the ending means like death.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a band that's literally talking about death and a lot of dark subjects.
Well, yeah.
That are a lot of imagery, like the celebration of the lizard, which was the thing that.
This comes from a guy who his whole college room, the room that he stayed in college or wherever he was at, was surrounded by books. Like from wall to wall. People that knew Jim Morrison at this time in his life, his room was just nothing but books, like a library. And they could pick a book out and start reading from it, and he could tell you exactly what book you were reading. Mm. That is where that came from. It's just this guy had a hunger for knowledge that I'll never have. I don't know what that's like to just be enthralled in book. Granted, I didn't grow up in the 60s. It might be his dad was a rear admiral in the Navy, so he traveled around, he was traveling around with his family everywhere. So there's got to be something that happens when you're just and you become that. But he was also kind of a trouble kid, you know. It's a kid who liked to start shit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got it. So as we were saying at the beginning of this,
but all that dark imagery and the grandiose visions that he would create with his music is just a product of him reading, you know, and just having all this information.
As I said, like when I was a kid, I got into the Doors in the 80s. You got into the Doors when the movie came out, which I
early
think
90s.
Early 90s.
1990. March 9th, 1990.
But the thing that I notice is as time has gone on, you know, that people are always still talking about the Stones. People talk about the Who, Led Zeppelin, of course. But a band that just sort of went to the wayside
is
the Doors. I don't know any. There's hardly anyone I know that's like the Doors. Yeah.
Well, the Doors is one of those bands that you either like or you don't like. That's what I've noticed with a lot of people. They're just either a Doors guy or they're not.
And you think that that may even be true with people that like other music from that time?
Yeah.
So you're saying like there's people like, yeah, I love Led Zeppelin, I love Pink Floyd, I love the Who.
I've heard that verbatim.
But the Doors, no.
Yeah, I've heard people verbatim tell me that. Like, they like all those bands, but there's something about the Doors. They were just a little off. But do you think that's what I think makes that band great? Because it's like... Well, and here's the deal about the Doors, hands down. With the exception of the Soft Parade. Yeah, with the exception of that, every album is badass. I mean, it doesn't, lose momentum. It's there. You mentioned The End. That was the last song on their first album.
Yep.
The last song on their last album together, L.A. Woman. Yep. Riders on the Storm.
Yep.
It's just like that, you know, you're talking about those dark overtones. And it's just, they still have that. And
do you think the reason why you have that you have a lot of people that may like all that other music, but they don't like the Doors, is it because that they found, would you say Jim Morrison is polarizing?
Maybe. I mean...
Or you either love him or you think he's an idiot or you hate him.
Yeah, everybody forms their own opinion. I don't really know what it is. You know, maybe it's the poetic thing, poems. Like I said, his lyrics are poetry.
Yeah.
It's not just, you know, I can't get no satisfaction. Some people, that's all their attention span will allow.
Yeah, that's not even correct
pronunciation. I can't get no satisfaction. You know, they can't. I like how I'm singing the Devo version. But you know what I mean? It's just like there's, you know, Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin was talking about, you know, J.R. Tolkien books. You know, there's a lot of that going on. But they were doing something right. You can't knock Led Zeppelin. Whatever they were doing, it never really completely turned me on. I was never like a major Led Zeppelin guy. But what they did worked. I think with the Doors, it is dark. A lot of people, I love them.
Do you think it's because it's maybe too dark for most people?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when he performed The End, you know, there's that story we all know where he, you know, even on the recording, I want to say he says, "Mother, I want to fuck you."
Oh, yeah.
"Father, I want to kill you." This is on an album. This is Pop Kids in the Summer of Love. The Doors, I really like that song, "Break On Through and Light My Fire." You know,
Touch me, babe.
This is going to be groovy, man. And then they're sitting there after they've just popped acid and they're tripping balls and they hear, "Father, yes, son, I want to kill you. Mother, I want to fuck you all night long." That probably led to a lot of depression for women in the 70s. Because they just thought they were going to listen to this boy band and, oh, God, they're cute. And he wears those leather pants.
He's a good-looking dude.
He's a good-looking man.
Or he was a good-looking.
And now he's talking about fucking his mother. And I want to say that probably alluded to some bad trips.
Oh, yeah.
Some real bummers, man. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe it opened up a lot of stuff.
No, I think you're probably right. And I think another thing...
They crossed lines.
And then as time went on, Jim Morrison wanted to get away from having that rock and roll image.
Yeah, I mean...
He grew a beard. He wasn't wearing the leather pants anymore. He kind of gained some weight.
Well, the thing about substance abuse is hygiene is the first thing to go.
Okay.
So that just comes along with the ride.
And I think with him it was like
stomach, beard. You know.
So I think it was like LSD and then booze. mushrooms.
Yeah, you know,
and a lot of
everybody
booze.
was taking LSD back then, or shrooms, or whatever they were
But it's not going to...
I wasn't there.
That's not going to put on the pounds, though.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you. Could you please repeat what you said?
Alexa, go fuck yourself. Sorry about that.
But just have it on me.
I thought I had the phone off. What the fuck? This is how the future's gonna fuck us over, you know?
Yeah.
When they reanimate Jim Morrison's corpse.
No, it'd been
he's gonna
funny
come
if
back
Alexa was
and
like...
chew my ass for all the facts I got.
No, it'd be funny if like Alexa's like, "Hey, Doc, I hear you. I can't help but overhearing that you guys are talking about the Doors. I like Jim Morrison."
And they did have a bass player, asshole.
Alexa calls you asshole.
When that day happens, it'll be a magical day. I want Alexa to call me an asshole. But no, it was influenced by living theater. You know, the thought
The dude
of
from
not
Poltergeist.
Julian Beck, yeah.
You're gonna die, all of you!
You can't keep her. I am not Jehovah.
Who would have think of
I'm
that?
glad we have this opportunity to talk with your family not around, 'cause I believe you're in danger.
It sounds
Talking
just
about another band that you don't know shit about.
like, it sounds just like him.